but I just don't know anymore because I'm just not sure. Um, Welcome to the pre-game banter, which is Art of Rock. Whoa, this is the Art of Rock. Welcome for joining us. Welcome for joining us. We're not caring about the English language today. Every Saturday morning we're here, but first and foremost, I would like to acknowledge the Tongva people for being the traditional landowners of Los Angeles, California. And thank you for being awesome. Thank you for surviving. That was Frank jumping on my Moog. Join us every Saturday. It's going to be one of those days. Join us every Saturday here at Art of Rock. Thanks, Frank. Twitch seems to be one of the main places that we go to, but you can watch it on YouTube or anywhere else. But you can't watch it on X anymore because I don't have premium, because screw those guys. This is made possible with Angelspit's Patreon. So much for joining and being a part of this. Frank is now getting on the blaster beam. Things are going to get funny. For $3 a month, you can back Angelspit's Patreon, and the money goes towards my synthesizer habit. Actually, the money goes towards food for Frank, and specifically cheese. Frank has just discovered cheese. So, and it's not like just regular cheese. It's like Parmesan. It's like really nice cheese. You don't want to touch that other stuff. He wants damn fine cheese. So it goes towards cheese for my cat. New Ice Planet 9000 album is there. Number 3 is actually ready to go. It's done. I'm very excited. But have a listen to that. I'm really, really excited. I was thinking about meditation and how this works with stuff. It's all very weird. That's something I'd like to talk about. The Industrial Incisions playlist. See how well I'm staying on the point this morning. That's the Industrial Incisions playlist. It's on Spotify, and it's awesome. Go listen to it. Go like it. And by the way, everybody on my Patreon, if you have a track, send it to me. Send me a track for this playlist, your track, so I can include you. Much more music here at MTV TV because they are amazing. They also, that's their Twitch. And after this, we're going to go and raid to MTV TV. That's a 32-track digital mixer, Frank. Please don't. If you're looking for your new favorite band, you're going to find it on MTV TV. It's amazing. They've also got a Patreon. And email them if you want to get involved because they're incredible. They've also got a Patreon, and it's here. Love their Patreon because we need to keep them going. Now, before we get started, I would like to thank my co-hostess with the absolute mostess, Razi. Thank you, Frank. Frank is also chiming with the thank. Check out Razi's YouTube. That's You Shriek. Bloody awesome band. Bloody awesome band. Great videos. Really smart. And Razi's also got a Patreon right there, so check that out. While we're here, I want to do a really quick roundhouse. And I want to know how everybody's week has been. Ivan. Actually, Diana, I'd like to hear from you first.
All right. Pardon me. Been doing all right. Been scheduling the next 3-4 weeks of shows already. Love having the submissions, keep sending them to MTV TV. Yeah, and I suppose that I've been really digging into Crimson Veil. Michigan Fitzgerald has like, I don't know, 7 or 8 different bands at least. But Crimson Veil is the latest one, and I've been just listening to it. That and Eris, HVIRESS, Eris, and getting into more of the syncopation and just odd time signatures and things. And so yeah, that's what I've been listening to.
That sounds fantastic. Who wants to go next? Razi, talk to me.
I wanted to ask Diana, is there a easy way to link to the playlist that you've been making of the songs that we mentioned on this show? Because that is my, I don't know, thing that I paid attention to this week is we look back on the show that we just did, and I get an email from MTV TV, and it says songs talked about in the thing. I'm like, we didn't mention any songs, and it's full of like 30, 20 different titles of things that we either, sort of half name checked or actually talked about, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, this is really good. So if you wanted to, could I just throw it back to you to talk about that for a sec?
Sure. Sorry. I just started a folder in the last couple weeks of, I just start paying attention to songs we mentioned during the show, and I make an entire playlist of them. And so I have a folder in the MTV TV Spotify called The Art of Rock. And I list the shows by date.
It's amazing. It's really, it's a cool resource. It ends up being stuff that you might not have thought to listen to, because even though we mention songs in passing, obviously we're busy trying to talk about the things and not pause and surreptitiously listen to the tunes instead of to each other. That would never happen. So yeah, that's cool. I guess if you subscribe to, or at least
Follow
the individual playlist, or at least follow the account for MTV TV, then it's the best way to do that.
MTV TV has a Spotify. So yeah, okay, so we'll go into that for just a second.
Cool.
Yeah, so I just started a folder that's just The Art of Rock, and so I'll just put them in by date of Art of Rock shows. But then for each New Music O'Clock on a Wednesday after the show is done, I make a playlist of each New Music O'Clock from MTV TV, so you can listen to it on the go.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I've been considering which streaming services to have subscriptions to, and fortunately, there's importer and exporter tools to get to, like YouTube Music or Apple Music or Deezer or whatever other thing you have. So if you don't have an account to listen to commercial free or to full tracks, even on Spotify, whatever the limitation happens to be, you can always export those playlists. And maybe if I get my shit together, I could do that in an automated sense and share them from my account, which is something I hope to do. But I've been sort of just paying attention to my own physical stuff this week. I haven't done a lot of technical or creative work. Just joining the cohort of people who have visual auras associated with migraine. It's a thing that I've had for most of my life since I was a teenager, and it just comes up intermittently. In this past, I get them in groups daily, sometimes just when I first wake up. So on the topic of stopping and thinking about what my own brain and neurology are doing, I'm treated to a dazzling little array of blind spots and colors and shimmering artifacts every morning for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, and then a headache. So it's fantastic. I highly recommend it, except for the part where it's terrible.
I'm really sorry that you have to go through that.
It's just, I want to, like these things that are so specific and not everybody talks about, like on a thing in public that somebody else might also experience, because it's a pretty odd thing. It's literally a line of shimmering in a blind spot that occurs for me. So pretty consistently, but I draw a picture of where it is every time and kind of think about it in case a doctor ever asks. So that's my past few days. And I played guitar every day at least. So getting by.
Bloody awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Ivan, how you been?
So busy week. I've had energy this week, which is good. I haven't had that in a while. So been pulling a lot of $100 bills off the wall, just ADHD thing. Scheduled an appointment with physical therapist, my leg. Got all the property taxes paid off so that we can move forward on financing the next big project on the house. Really made some progress on a big project at work. Started a new song project. Right now is kind of a like it's getting lyrics, and it's about being chained up in a cave and trying to view reality via the shadows that are coming in. The only way to explain it. See what else is going on. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll finally be able to order up the 2x4s to do the framing for new studio upstairs, because that's finally gonna make some progress. Let's see what else. Oh, the New Cigarettes After Sex album X. Really not industrial, but really good. Like, they've come a long ways since 2019 when I saw them at Talia Hall. Now they're playing at like stadium sized venues, which is, kind of mind blowing how big they got all of a sudden. And despite the fact that I don't know anybody that actually listens to them other than me. What else is going on? No, yeah, that's been my week pretty much. Oh, and apparently this is Tabby Cats Go Crazy week.
Fantastic. Okay. Why this week and not every single week?
Ours got tuna juice at the beginning of the week, and it's all about more tuna juice ever since.
Interesting.
I'm gonna misbehave until you give me what I want kind of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Frank's, as I mentioned before, Frank's on a big cheese bender.
Yeah.
My God. Thank you. Rob, how's your week been?
Yeah, quite busy. That's usual for me. I generally work 40 hours between Monday and Thursday, so that gives me Fridays off. And Friday's been all maintenance. Got plumbing clogs, and we're still repairing the tree damage from the storm. But the good news is I did get an insurance check in the mail to recover a lot of the equipment that was lost in the 4 inches of rain and the oak tree collision with the shed of fuckery. And that's where I was doing all my green screen recording as well. So I've got to find a new spot to set up that stuff. I've already changed my temporary studio to another room. And it's basically in my computer room now, which is what I tried to avoid for a long time. But now I'm mixing the two again, which has its challenges, because you get frustrated by looking at your fun projects while you're doing work, and then you get sidetracked by trying to do fun things when your work is sitting across the room from you. But yeah, it's all been good, doing a lot of work in 3D stuff for different projects, different people, and music-wise, I've been experimenting with the SH4D Roland with some new patch updates to my Novation keyboard. And I've been having fun teaching my son and my daughter keyboard and brushing up my skills as well, doing some piano lessons to sharpen up my finger skills, because they've kind of degraded over time. So refresher, what they call finger yoga, actually 10 minutes a day, is making a massive impact on my ability to get around the keyboard again, which is just brilliant. Yeah, that's it from me.
That's amazing. And if you've got a link to finger yoga, that sort of thing could be very interesting for all. Thank you.
Yeah, can do. Send your document.
Cool. And I thank you for starting my week off with awesome video talk about Ice Planet 9000 videos. It was awesome and inspiring. Loved it. We're talking about using computer bits to make really cool videos for Ice Planet 9000, and I'm very inspired by this. I finished the last 2 tracks of the new Ice Planet 9000. That's the third one. One of them is just bowing the blaster beam for 13 minutes. That's it. And it's weird. It's very interesting that I listen to Ice Planet. I listen to the tracks when I'm sort of like dozing off, just to feel what they do to me. And it's interesting how it evokes kind of crazy dreams and visions. It's very interesting that I got a comment from somebody saying it's really good to make art too, because Ice Planet 9000 is kind of active. It's not beta wave stuff. It's quite active, so it's engaging your mind. I guess once again it comes down to the lesson in art that you've got to do what you do I want to sound like Steve Roche. I want to sound like that beautiful endless ambient music, but that's not what I do. You just got to go with it. Finished, kind of finished an Angelspit track. The new lyrics. I'm so happy on this new album. The lyrics are fucking scathing. I think I mentioned I've been dealing with a whole bunch of depression, like really bad depression. Like lying in bed. I never lie in bed for the day. Never, never, never. But yesterday I just couldn't get up. So that's good. Girlfriend came over to look after me, so I'm feeling a lot better. Then I had some friends over and we were jamming, which leads us into the first question. Jamming is a very interesting thing, and I'm not sure that you're not taught how to jam, but you should be taught how to jam, because I want to hear from you guys what you think jamming is and how to do it right. Who would like to start on this? I can start. I see no hands. Okay. No, Rosie, I see your hand. Go.
Yeah, I can't speak from authority in the past 30 years. I've sort of fallen off entirely of live in a room collaborating with other musicians without a set composition, which is, I guess, what we're talking about, jamming. But it's also like making sounds with people in a room. I mean, to really open up the possibilities. One of the things that I have done in that time period is my young niece on a drum kit that's at my parents' place where the family gets together, and me on guitar. And she's just very expressive on the drums, as a untrained and talented, creative person. It was it's been a couple of years since I've done this, but I'm going there this afternoon, and I look forward to doing the same thing. But it's like kind of out there. It's not 12-bar blues for 30 minutes in a linear form with taking solos every time the turnaround comes up. Yeah, let me think about other things, because there's the formal like jamming for the purpose, like to get better at a song that you're about to perform, but that's kind of the opposite thing, and that I have a little more experience with, but somebody else can jump in while I'm thinking about it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate this. Rob, what do you think?
So a couple of simple rules. The first one would be that nobody should have anything urgent on their calendar for the day. So everyone comes in, you plan ahead and say everyone's going to reserve this day to jam. And when you come prepared. You come prepared with your favorite drinks, your favorite chips, your favorite food. You come with some music material, whether it's a book full of lyrics or some drum beats in mind, or, you bring your gear, you've got to set it all up. So it's going to take you typically an hour to get everything plugged in and set up and get ready to do recording. And you plan for everyone to be relaxed, listening, and throwing little bits and pieces in. And we would spend about 20 to 30 minutes mucking around on one or two different tunes or melodies, trying to make something out of it. So, for example, the guitarist says, "Hey, I've got this little ditty that I've been working on. Let's see what we can make out of this." And so the drummer will listen to it. The drummer will start laying down a beat to it. The bass player will chime in. And it doesn't really matter what instruments you're talking about. It could be keyboards, it could be loops. It doesn't really matter. Somebody's got something they like. They want to make something out of it. And everyone gently finds their groove and their bandwidth to insert into the melody. Taking time for breaks is really important. Having a mental rest and saying, okay, let's all take a cigarette break or a lunch break or what have you, and then plan on getting back together again at a certain time. We've actually spent entire weekends doing this before, where you don't have anything planned for the whole weekend. Nobody's anxious, nobody's urgent, everyone's relaxed, and you just take time to record little ditties. The other challenge is the recording side of it. What you're going to do with the material after the fact really depends on what you found to be working well. So be prepared to record audio with multiple channels for, you know, two-hour blocks, and then be prepared to back that stuff up and go through it at a later date and tease out what you think worked really well. We've jammed for, say, half a day, like 3 or 4 hours, and found a groove on somebody's lyrics or somebody's guitar riff. And by the second time that we come back to it, like day 2 in the morning, we go, all right, these 3 elements from yesterday seem to have promise. Let's nail these 3 this morning. And sure enough, on the second rehearsal, we had a full song down ×3 for the ones that were yesterday, sounded really good. And I'm talking about rock, metal, that sort of stuff, a little bit of industrial like Prodigy. That's the sort of stuff that we were working on. And if everyone's in tune and respectful and trying to make harmony, not just busting in with testing their pedal and interrupting the mojo of the moment, then it works really well. So yeah, that's my observation from jam sessions. And it's a discovery process where musicians are coming together and you want to discover something new, happy accidents included. Over.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Ivan, Rob, you hit some real points there. Ivan, please, you go first, Ivan. I'll come in after you.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's like jamming in particular. It's kind of it's a musical conversation, and so you get to say your part, but you leave space for other people to say their part. You don't try to burn the whole thing down. And yeah, I mean, like you definitely want to start with the drums, because once you know the like BPMs you're operating at, and like the drummer can kind of like drive the direction of the conversation, and then from there get your bass going, and now you know what key things are going to be in, and then from there, like, you can add color to the conversation with melodic parts coming from guitar, keyboard, or well, even the bass player, if you're that way. And like it takes it's improvisational conversation, so like that is a special skill. It takes practice to get good at that because of the improvisation. And like this is one of the places where like maybe AI will catch up to us someday, but that day's a long ways away yet, because AI cannot jam at all.
Bam.
Just its turnaround is too short, and also it only thinks in derivatives of other things. So like it's not coming up with like crazy new, it's repackaging crazy old. So like it's gonna end up boring, which no surprise there. But yeah, I mean, it is that's a skill that requires practice. I mean, because like even like really great, like really great, like concert pianists, that they know their Beethoven, or they know their Mozart. But like back in the day when those parts got when those songs got when that stuff got originally written, there were parts for improvisation included in there. They don't include those. They don't think of it that way anymore. Now this was an improvisation that worked really well, so we just reuse that all the time. And if you like suddenly took one of those musicians and threw them out into, hey, improvise this new thing, they're lost, because like that's not their core skill set, and that's not a problem. It's just what it is. You know, they've spent no time practicing improvisation, and so like it shows. It ends up being a thing. Um, and like I said, it's not a bad thing. I mean, holy crap, I'm never gonna play those pieces as well as they can. At the same time, like, I'm gonna be busy coming up with my own new shit, which sometimes will be really bad. So,
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, many brilliant musicians I've come across don't know how to jam. And I'm going to go, so I'm just going to say it. I think you've got to learn how to jam. You don't just instinctively do it. You've got to learn how to jam. It's like you're having a really good, engaging conversation with somebody. I absolutely agree with so much of what was said here. Rob, vibe, absolutely. Snacks. One thing I said to the guys that came over, I said, "Oh, get snacks. I won't eat them, but you'll need them." And they went, "Oh, we didn't bring snacks." And it's like snacks and beers. Or juices or whatever you're into, that comfort thing. Jamming is about listening. It is about listening. It is about reacting. Dude, it's basically theater improv for fucking musicians, because if you die in a jam, you die in real life. Thank you, Bo. Thank you for getting that. Yeah, you got to listen. And, it's, I hate this saying as much as everybody, but it really is the act of and. Yes, and. So someone's playing a C. Well, your S and yes and contribution to that might be C major over the top of that. And then somebody else's yes and contribution might be an E flat and a B flat. So you got this great big sexy chord 7 flat 9 sharp 9. That's the thing that we're going for here, is to yes and this, and from that big chord it might kind of evolve into this that would maybe go into a B flat major or something, I don't know, or something. Yes and comfort. Jamming's about telepathy. And if you jam good, it's this exhilarating, amazing experience where you have made this profound contact with other people, and you've had a conversation with these other people by not even saying a word, on this higher level, and you are telepathically connected. I was lucky enough in university that they taught us how to jam. So not only were you expected to be an amazing player, vocalist, whatever, but you learned how to jam. And they started on the 12-bar blues, and then off we go. There's a galaxy beyond that. And when I was at uni, I was in a band called Spawn. And in one afternoon, we jammed, in 3 hours, we jammed out the entire album, because we were there. And we had these conversations, and those simple conversations became a bloody good album too, I'll say. Because they were good at their instruments. And that's another thing as well, is be good at your instrument, know what you're doing. Yes, happy accidents, but you've got to know, if somebody has an idea, like you got to know chords, I think. And if you don't know chords, then stick to the pentatonic. But the more you know about chords, the more about musicality, the more you understand the language of music, the more interesting conversation, and you can get in there and ever so slightly tilt things. And you need to have stick a painting on the wall and say, this is our starting point, that painting. Whatever that painting is. It might be a Bob Ross with Happy Accidents. Actually getting everybody to watch Bob Ross before the jam, like at home, watch Bob Ross. That's what we're going to try and do. And that might end up being metal or ambient or electronic music or whatever. But Have a suggestion for the key or the key center. Have a suggestion for the moods, maybe the chords. Have a suggestion for the tempo. And this is just the start. This is just a launch pad to go into the far reaches of alternative realities. And as I mentioned, you've got to get inside people's heads. So therefore, start with the topic of conversation, of musical conversation. Okay, guys, it's going to be an E. It's going to be 105 BPM, and we're going to be painting Bob Ross clouds. That's what we're going to do, and it's going to be beautiful, calm, and peaceful. And you might end up painting this fantastic storm cloud that's got driving rhythms, and it's 180 BPM. Hey, gee, I don't know, but we're going to go there together. There's a time to risk and there is a time not to risk. And it comes down to listening. You must listen. And you know, in a conversation, sometimes you're going to say something and it might go to a bit of a lull, then someone's going to pick it up and everyone's going to laugh. Jamming's the same thing. And I miss jamming so much. My God, I miss jamming. Like, I miss jamming, and you can't jam over Zoom. You can't do it, because when I'm jamming, I like to creep up behind someone, breathe down their neck and gently rub their neck as well, and then look at what keys they're playing. So I can go, okay, oh, look, they're kind of doing an A arpeggiator, a C major. Great. Well, then I'm going to make chords which is C major going to A minor. So they can keep playing their da 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 da, and I can go C major, then A minor, and that da 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 is going to sound great over an A minor. Play. That's all I got. Raziel, I want to hear your thoughts on this.
There's sort of some kind of distinction between the idea that jamming is to write music and come up with stuff, and versus as a recreational activity, or something just for pleasure, which isn't going to necessarily get recorded or get transcribed. And every once in a while you hear jazz being referred to as an improvisational genre of music, and you think, well, I know some jazz standards that are songs and they have a form and a melody and but there's always a lot of substituting chords and changing your voicings and doing voice leading in concert with the other people that you're performing with in a lot of those ensembles that are working at a really high level. That's obviously I'm talking out of my own, not from my own experience in any way for this, but just from how I've heard it described. And I was talking to another rock musician about video games in the studio, and we're like, yeah, this first person shooter and that, grinding for points, and the hours that we spent, and this friend of mine who's a baritone sax player, session heavy, Berkeley teacher, he played with Cab Calloway and stuff. He's like, when did you guys have time to play video games? I'm like, well, you just play them, He's like, no, I was learning like a lick in every key. Like, I just go up and down, like whatever lick I had in my head, and I'd spend, countless hours transposing it into every key possible, so that when I showed up for the session, I had my fingers, ready, and my mind ready to just like sit in, and it didn't, it could do it in whatever the tempo and whatever the tonality was. And I was like, oh, well, in some ways I'm a little bit envious of that dedication and those kinds of skills. But that's a whole other thing. It's a whole other level. Yeah, just an anecdote on that front. There's a lot of different ways to approach what the jam session is, and if you don't have every key available to you because you're a rock guitarist, then yeah, like Carl said, E minor pentatonic is going to be your go-to, and you can just sort of get away with murder on that. And the rules are as everybody has said so far: listen and no noodling.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I just want to, Rob, I see your hand. I just want to jump in that there's this thing I've been doing. And once again, Rob, I want to know that yoga, that finger yoga. Something I've been doing is getting on a keyboard going 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 4 4 4 4 4 4 4 4 5 5 5 5 5. I send a Laurie Anderson now. Then I'll go back to the 2, but 2 major, 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 and then it's 4 5. Then I'll go back to, so it'll start on C, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, or B flat. Then I'll go through the sharps, just so I can, because I'm an awful keyboard player, and I'm really finding that this is helping my dexterity and also my brain function. Because I tell you what, man, if you want to experience a high velocity problem solving, jam. Like it's, like your friend said, Razi, that when you're figuring out those licks in different keys and stuff, and you're bending your mind to go, how do I transpose this right now into a key, a major third higher or something like that? It's really, you feel your brain going, "Ah." It's the best feeling. It's the best feeling. Anyway, I will shut up. Rob, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. Ownership and consensus is important in a jam. So there shouldn't be one leader. There shouldn't be somebody who owns the creative method. Everybody is a participant in a unit, and everyone should be inspired and enjoy what seems to work well. And the way that we achieved that was, I would say that there was a measure of enthusiasm after each track that we did and worked on. My dog making noises. The enthusiasm was at the end of a song, when you all agreed to wind it down, there would be some jubilation and excitement and laughter and, wow, that was cool, And we could basically review the tracks and the improv at the end of the evening each day and look for the tracks where there was that jubilation at the end of the track and say, seems like we've got consensus on that one, but that's a really cool one. And everyone would pipe in and say, I like this element, and I like what you did with the vocals, and I like what you did with that lick. So we knew what parts to keep, and we knew what we had to practice and rehearse and get tight. So for the next day, we already knew exactly what we had to work on to nail it. So getting that ownership and consensus is really important. Otherwise, if you've only got 3 out of the 4 or 1 out of the 2 or 2 out of the 3 people excited, you probably won't get that emotional investment from that 3rd or 4th person. And that will kind of show in the mix because they won't be as tight and convicted and they won't be getting the groove. And I think understanding the mood of the track is really important. Like beats per minute is one thing, but if it's really somber and people want to express in a somber way with certain chord progressions, that's super powerful in getting the effect that everyone's thinking that they're aiming for. So understanding the chord progressions is really important. I would also say that when you're doing pure improv, there's nothing wrong with being completely silly and having fun. And we had some moments, where if somebody drank too much or whatever they were doing, they were kind of, happy and bubbly, and they thought, hey, wouldn't it be silly if we did this? And we pick up something out of the kitchen and start making a rattling noise out of it and try to be instrumental with that object. Like, it was a dish rack that we ended up using. I don't know if the honky tonk guys in the Blue Mountains who have these scratchy things that they have on the front. We started doing that and singing and playing to that. And it was fun. It was exciting. It was new. It was different. And I think the energy in the group matters. If you get lost and everyone's playing the same chords over for 10 minutes, chances are people are getting bored and they're going to want to change it up for something else. So don't forget that it's got to be fun. It's got to be engaging. As far as the finger yoga goes, things like stretching with the different keys, different fingers across the keyboard, those things I'll send you info on. Also, practicing your scales using theory, not memory. So you can change the key at any time you like. If you just remember the combination of tones and semitones, then you'll hit those scales really easily without having to memorize anything. Practicing those scales is important, and also being able to strike the same key consistently with the same amount of pressure with a different finger every time. And that way, that enables you to be able to easily play up the keyboard or down the keyboard. And then practicing all of your motions on right hand and left hand independently, because it's like driving a car. Once you know how to drive, it's automatic. So the more you practice 5 or 10 minutes a day doing those progressions with each hand, the easier the complex stuff becomes automatic. So there's no magician, there's no magic, there's no talent. It's just muscle memory, memorizing operations and being able to reproduce that whenever you like with both hands. And that's something I've always struggled with. I think everyone struggles with that, as playing with both hands at once. And then also being able to fluidly play over your hands so you can go up and down the keyboard. There's some really good exercises for doing that. But I'll send a link to the finger yoga so you can check it out. That's all from me.
Bloody awesome. Thank you. It really is wax on, wax off, isn't it? It is just kung fu.
Yeah.
One thought I did have is that if you're using a synthesizer, having presets because you don't want to be programming a synth, although I'll get to that, that you can call on to say, oh, here's my brass stab, or here's my big pad sound, or here's my XYZ, or here's my just rudimentary piano, is really important. Because I think as a keyboard player, you've also got a whole bunch of really cool textures and stuff that you can be calling on. And it was interesting the other night that the Voyager, the Moog Voyager, I think won the night because it was all there and you could slide in anything you needed. The Rev 2 was similar, analog, lots of knobs, so you could change anything. The Moog one, not so much, because it's so fucking complicated. Sure, you can pull up a sound, and you can pull up a doozy of a sound on that thing, but you've got to know what you're doing. Whereas, like I said, the Voyager, it's just, and if you've got like a little, like one of the Roland or one of the Korg mini log things, perfect, because it's simple knobs, simple boom, boom, boom in there, and you go. And that's another thing as well, as when you're playing with sequences or, a repetitive phrase, the ability to go in there and easily change those, the notes, so that the melodies and whatever is going on is also changing. And know whatever the clocking is, like if it's MIDI clock, I wish you luck. I wish you all the luck in the world if it's MIDI clock. But if it's analog clock, make sure everybody's got, they're all on the same pulse per quarter. And they're all receiving the same thing. And there's a little distribution box where you can just plug it in and say, this will drive my Korg monologue. This will drive my dope for sequencer, blah, 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 blah. No thought. Because jamming with sequences is insane fun. Razzie, talk to me.
Actually, sort of, you just caught my interest. I have two tangents now. Getting everything synchronized and having the improv be filter sweeps and envelope amounts to filters and stuff is actually one of the more satisfying versions of a jam. And it's a limited thing because you're locked in on the clock and somebody's got to do the tempo master and everything. But once you've got the SH101, the TR909, and the TR and the TB303 like actually going, and you're doing these tweaks and stuff in real time and making like acid, it's that's a jam. But I also wanted to point out that we are so far seem to be really talking about like tonal, like chord progression music and sort of very formal stuff.
And
as
it's
opposed
interesting
to
how a bunch of boffins I've been talking about rock and roll.
This is what I'm getting at.
Isn't
Like,
that
you think
interesting?
jam, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, smoke a spliff and rock out in pentatonic. But it really drew to mind this one last time I actually sat in on an open jam of some sort, loft over in the place that I used to have in Boston here, open party, and a couple of people who were like totally heavies, like got on the synthesizer, and I was on the guitar amp, and there were people making noises, and it was not melodic harmony, follow the leader. It was a noise kind of session, but with taste and people sitting out at appropriate times and responding to each other. And Carl, you mentioned the not programming things, but freaking DJ Chris on a Moog Rogue of all things, I think that's the one with the membrane front. It doesn't even have like knobs or anything. Just evoked stuff, programming on the fly as sounds rather than melodic figures that were inspirational. And I remember it, like as an event in my life to this day. So there's yeah, I think we've probably had communally moments like that, where it's been sounds and not following a chord progression necessarily, and really gone to outer space. I don't know. Yes, as you said,
I
rock and roll
agree.
versus noise excursions.
Mm. And also, when you're doing all that stuff, like if you have a modular or if you have some distortion pedals and stuff like that, stuff gets real fun real fast because it's that drum machine. Let's go distortion land, or let's go phaser land, or let's go whatever. And it's like, oh, now shit's really happening. But once again, I'll stand firm that those rules still apply. And that's the one thing. Chris, welcome. And I see your hand. Give me a sec. It's the one really important thing I've noticed about synth related jams is that very quickly people just go off.
Yeah.
They don't listen anymore, and you must listen. You've got to listen. And they're going, oh, exploring sounds. Oh, like one of the guys the other night was just going crazy on the Voyager, going click, 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 click knobs. And I just said, don't do that because you don't know what you're doing. It's a really expensive instrument. And you're not contributing to the language of, you're not listening. But I guess some of the craziest jams I've had have been, I call them boffin jams, when we're just on fucking knobs. But like I said, the problem is that boffins go into their own mind and they shut out everything else. And it's like, no, you gotta listen. It's still jamming, baby. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
There you go. I had to unmute myself. Hello, everybody. I want to say up front that we have with two Antipodeans in the group. If you hear me slowly go into an Australian accent, I am not mocking you. It's because I love A, the country, B, the accent so much. And when I love accents, I will tend to mimic them. Razi probably doesn't remember this, thank God. But when we knew each other back in the day at uni, when we were, well, I was young and pretty. Mark was just beautiful all the time. I started talking like Mickey Rourke in Barfly, which at that point was one of my favorite movies. It was really not great for a guy from Connecticut. So anyway, on jamming, something I will talk about at length, though I have participated in them not quite as often as I would like to. And what you're saying, Carl, about boffins, oh, that's so true. And it's interesting because I'm thinking, as I'm listening to everybody talk, it's like, wow, I haven't done as many musical jams as I'd like. I've done, though, a decent amount of like comedy improv and stuff, and there's very similar rules to that to be followed, here. I think, like, especially the boffins thing you said, like, if you're not listening to the other people around you, like the audience gets it. And if you're not, you're not there to contribute, that you're there to I don't know what the word is. I mean, you're there to basically, stand up there and look good.
Wank.
Yeah, thank you. That was in the mind, but I was also like, is it really wanking? No, it is. It is wanking. I remember a million years ago, I was at like a strange little loft party in Port Chester, New York, and these guys had this set up, and they had pool table and shit, but in one corner they had a drum kit and like some amps, and 3 or 4 people were jamming, and there was a guy on drums and a woman playing. I remember distinctly a Steinberger bass, which now I'd love to see. And back then it was just at the point where you were kind of sick of seeing them. But anyway, at one point the drummer just stops and he's just like, bam, on the snare. And everybody stops and everyone's looking at him. And he points to the bassist. He's like, I'm sorry, you're not listening to anything. You're just up and down and all around and not listening. And she was pissed, but he was right. And that was the weird thing. It was like watching, it was like, oh, and they didn't really get it together. They tried to like pull it together. And yeah, if you're not, it's so great because even though I said, like, I haven't done many jams, I've really thought a lot about stuff like this in relations to, I do a lot of solo improv on the gear back here, but also been talking about it with other musicians. A question I'd like to ask everybody, and if you can pin it to remember, is like, have people had a better experience like jamming with more, let's say, if there's like jazz or classical musicians or rock musicians or like just classical? Because I've found in being part of like the synthesizer end or something, there's a little more fluidity in jazz musicians. I've found, I could be wrong, and a lot of classical musicians really get undone if they're not looking at charts and don't have sheet music. Again, I'm talking to you from, my attic studio, so what do I know? But that's been my experience in talking to people. But that art of that thing about listening, and this is the art of rock, but it's like this episode, the art of listening, because really, even when you're doing improv by yourself or with other people, like if you're not listening to what's going on, you're not only missing out, but you're wanking. You're not participating. And it's been, the closest I can come to like an immediate experience of this is collaboration with some other artists. I've been doing more of that, and it's been really fascinating because I realized that the biggest problem, like I was having trouble coming up with creative stuff, like anything good when talking with when doing this stuff. And what I realized was I was not listening to the source material, to the original. I was approaching it like, okay, I'm cathode ray tube, and I'm going to come in and do my cathode ray tube thing. A lot of dub delays, some drum and bass, whatever I think my I want to say my trademarks, but they're really my cliches. Um, and once I've been listening to what's going on, it's really, I mean, that's the key, and that's the beautiful thing. And so much more opens up in that experience when you do that. I just remembered, like, Razi, when you're talking about noise, I was playing with some friends who had a industrial band called Shopwell, and it was basically they would show up to a space, like any abandoned space or something, with a tape recorder and some hammers and just beat on everything they could. Yes. And it was amazing because in that it was the same thing. I was like, what am I supposed to do? And my friend Paul was like, just do anything. I'm like, oh. And I was I mean, I think I might have been under 20 at that time. I was so young and inexperienced in terms of music, but let alone like an improv thing like that. And I had the same experience, even though I was like, I was shirtless in an abandoned warehouse with a giant piece of steel in one hand, banging on a metal pipe. I stopped, and at one point I was like, "Oh, I'm off in my own world." And like once I started getting in, I'm not saying it turned into you know, an industrial symphony, but it was really quite a more powerful experience for me like that. So yeah, so that's what I'm thinking at the moment.
And there's some really great thoughts. Thank you. It's interesting that I think one of my really big takeaways here is, like you said, Chris, is that you ultimately, who are you jamming for? And that's a problem that if you're not listening, you're jamming for yourself, and that's pointless. Go back into your bedroom and keep masturbating. You jam for the audience, or you jam for God, because Rick Rubin, what's the bearded Yoda guy? Rick Rubin, who has lots of money and is all zen. It's easy to be very zen when you got lots of money. Oh shit, did I just say that? Oh fuck. Oh, I just said that. Yeah, and listening to him talk about how you can just be you and do anything you really want from his fantastic mansion in Hollywood Hills.
I just typed a Rick Rubin quote into the notes while Chang was talking, so I'm going to just cross that out and move on.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. No, do it. I mean, even God speaks through donkeys. Oh no, I'm not saying Rick Rubin's a donkey. That guy's got he's got the chops, and he's a smart man. He is where he is because he's a smart man. Don't get me wrong. But one of his quotes was about jamming for God, or making music for God. And that was really brilliant to me. That was great. And the concept of you are jamming for higher entities, higher listeners in the room who you just can't see. That's really fantastic. No, please, Rick Rubin roots, because he's very good. He's not like Brian Eno good, but he's good. Anyone thinks I got beef with that guy. Yeah, hold on. Rezi, did you want to jump in there? Or
No, I did listen to the Rick Rubin book past 2 weeks. I actually started it a few weeks ago, and my library subscription lapsed, but it's available from Boston Public Library, Chang. That doesn't help you that much unless you're in the coordinated system out of state, but that's where I got it from. And the listen is good because he rings a Zen bowl between chapters to refocus your attention. So it helps with your actual practice. But other than, yes, recommend listening because he'll say the things that you are already thinking, except in a really mellow, sonorous, close to the mic kind of way, which makes it have gravitas and become more believable. Then listen to it for that.
Oh no, that sounds great. Reminds me of another quote, which is, "I'll tell you things you already know, so you can say I believe in you so much." Henry Rollins, where are you when we need you? Rollins,
I'm sorry. There's so much mouth noise removal in book recording these days. Like, I guess Isotope, probably you just run it through that and take out all the clicks so they can get really close to the mic. It's amazing. But one of the things that happens when I'm listening to these things is I hear like, oh, it's a new day and a new take, and he's trying to match the energy from the previous take, but it doesn't quite. Anyway.
I do a lot of podcasts and mouth sounds. I tell people till I'm blue in the face, you've got to drink. You've got to have some water before to lubricate that engine, because if you don't, people are going to listen to that compressed and they're going to vomit. It's the most gross, disgusting. And I'll go up to them. I see your hand, Chris. I'm just ranting. I will go up to them and I'll go, I'll make mouth sounds at them until they go, dude, what are you doing? And I'm just saying this is what it sounds like when someone's listening to your podcast driving through fucking LA traffic. Highly compressed. It gets very annoying very quickly and they're going to turn it off. That's why I'm all about not close miking, just myself. But we're not talking about that now. And I apologize, Chris. Get us back on course.
It's okay. I may not get us back on course, but I'll certainly say something. I love that now, because all I'm going to think about though is close miking and like sitting right in front of it and just, Thank you for letting me know the Rick Rubin book is worth checking out. I've had some other friends recommend it, and I was skeptical, but if y'all are saying it too, then I should kick in. It's just the hard part for me with Rick Rubin is I remember him first from the Beastie Boys videos and from Run DMC's Tougher Than Leather, which is an amazing movie. If not great one, but yeah. So that's me on Rick Rubin. But I just thought of something, a story of David Bowie recording the Tin Machine sessions for like their first album. And like, I don't know if anyone's listened to that lately, but I have, and I've just been ashamed at how amazing it is. And like, once again, Bowie like just was doing this thing. Like, I don't even know what he was necessarily doing with it. Like, it wasn't math rock, 2 or 3 years early, but it was something different that wasn't happening until later. But for those sessions, apparently, I read that the band would be like, they'd get in a rehearsal space, and he's got Hunt and Tony Sales, the guys who, Soupy Sales' sons, who did the drums and bass for like, Lust for Life and all this other things. And then I forget, it was Reeves Gabrels, and God forgive me for forgetting who the bass player is. But anyway, they would jam in the rehearsal space while Bowie would paint. And when I read this as a younger, dumber man, I was like, it's so fucking stupid. Like, I would sit around watching the guy paint. I'm like, let's make some rock. Then as I got older and began to understand that the creative process and the creative energies are, if in some people, like I would say Bowie, and I'm this way too, but I'm no Bowie, it comes out in different ways, and the expression, you get to the point, sideways. I'm also realized that, a linear progression of anything is not necessarily the way, it's going to be all over. But applying that to like my thoughts of like jamming and stuff is like, wow, that must have been like kind of wild for those guys too, to be like, have those images of what he painted in their head as they're probably tracking that album and as they're doing stuff. And that's really a key thing, and shaping it. So like, it'd be crazy to see a bunch of, I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but I'm sure a bunch of musicians, improvising musicians, and like an improv comedy troupe or something working side by side. And they provide the soundtrack, and then they're doing the actions. That'd be
Or
crazy.
Buto dancers.
Oh, my wife studied with Amagatsu Sensei of Sankai Juku, it was the craziest performance I've ever been in, not just for the rabbit up in a bowl on a 15-foot pole, but because of Buto itself. At one point, I was ashamed to tell my wife initially. I fell asleep during the performance. Later on, I found out, she's like, oh no, I did too, but we weren't sleeping. We went somewhere else. And I'm like, oh my God, you're right. And then to meet Amagatsu Sensei afterwards was just amazing, because talking to a guy who's like in talcum from head to toe, who's also correcting you on how to properly bow, was like a major experience. But yeah, Buto dances. Yes. Oh, don't get me so excited.
Because this is I see your hand, Rosie. I nearly had the opportunity to go into the desert for 2 weeks with Tess DeQuincy, Budo Master Tess DeQuincy, to do a thing called body weather. And it was fasting, vegan meal, Buddhism, and Buto. And intense Budo. And I got to the point where I was going to pay the money, and I looked at everybody who else was doing it, and they were like ninjutsu masters, karate masters, members of the Australian Ballet Academy. And I went, nah, I don't think I'm going to go in front of those guys.
Oh, you would have been overwhelmed, I bet, but you also probably would have come out of that feeling like fucking Iron Man.
Yeah, I would have been a different person. It is a regret of my life.
Or you would have died. Was that in Australia, or was that?
Yeah. It was going to be in Cooper Pedy. It was going to be in the fucking desert, like Death Valley kind of desert. But it's like, wow. Thank you. I'm going to pull it back, and I want to hear Rosie. I saw your hand.
Yeah, but I just wanted to drop a Reeves anecdote since we're talking about that, and I kind of feel like that moment is past.
Drop it anyway.
I'm down.
Okay. There's something about thinking about Bowie's band Tin Machine showing up for that session as professionals. Like they're there for that gig. They brought the skills. But if there's one thing I do know about Mr. Gabrels is his personality lends to that sort of behavior. Like get in a room and be a team member and a player and a, you know, not egos, it's personalities, you know, like I think that might be the confluence of the excellent jam that Bowie is probably pretty good at that point at putting a band together after being through several iterations of bands that seemed to work. People went nuts and had to leave his bands and stuff, but putting that one together, skills, professionalism, and the personality. Reeves, I went for a walk with him out of Wurlitzer Music here in Boston when I was working there. He was an ex-employee. That was our common thing, and that was enough to go get a muffaletta at the sandwich shop with him.
No
Just,
shit. Sorry, but
you know,
what?
he was a counter guy, and I was a front counter guy, you know, selling strings and stuff. So we had to hit it off. But that's like the
What year
kind of
was that? Sorry, what year was that? Sorry.
92 maybe, I don't know. It was before the Cure anyway. It was a long ass time ago. But you know, like being able to hang is what we're talking about, to keep with the dumb rock and roll parlance, you know, like that is there's some analogous like personality trait to the jam session that goes with that, and you get your mind working with other people in that way. That's like maybe the elusive, amazing, rare skill of a really good bandmate, jam session member, human being, something to it.
And I thank you very much. That's great. Firstly, I've got to get into Tin Machine. I listened to it once and I went, I don't get it. And that was a long time ago, but I've got to listen to it again. In fact, when it first came out, I think I listened to it and went, nah, because everyone panned it. And I've always thought it's going to be one of those albums where you've got to listen. Same with Loving the Alien. You got to listen to that album because there's something going on in there. There's got to be.
Yep.
Yeah,
Tin Machine, I too panned it because, you know, I wanted Bowie to be just like, you know, the Berlin trilogy and maybe some of the classics and that's it. And I started at one point and I got to start again going backwards through his catalog. And it's just amazing. There's so many times I slap my head, but Tin Machine, especially, like I was just reading the notes and like he did that in 89.
Was it Major in it or something?
I don't know. It was,
doesn't matter.
Yeah,
but anyway,
but 89 and nobody else was like, I mean, nobody else was doing that stuff. You know, it's just crazy to think. I was just thinking about in terms of jamming, like what you said about, you know, being able to hang, Razi, you know, and I remember it's a shame I have more anecdotes than experience, but I have to remedy that. You know, I'll say, you know, for me, I've had a lot of interesting conversations recently. I'm self-taught. I can't read music, but I know a lot of classical and jazz musicians, and I've been talking to them a lot lately about performance and things like that. And the thing I've found, it's like again, Razi said, you know, being able to hang because you'll meet these people and you know they'll be very unassuming, and then they sit down with their instrument of choice and they proceed to, you know, play with the voice of angels or something, or demons, depending on it. And you know, I think it's interesting. I think it's an ability like of a musician, you know, whether you're, you know, muy self-taught and, you know, rough cut, or you're like, you know, I know all the scales God ever made, and you know, I know my Mixolydian from my Euclidean. I mean, think about Adrian Belew first, you know, starting with Zappa. And that guy, I don't know if he can read music. I know he was self-taught and taught himself like, and his chord formations were insane. But then from Zappa to like some Bowie, and then to King Crimson with Robert Fripp, who is, born tone deaf, practiced 6 to 8 hours a day. One of the many guitarists of the 60s who says Jimi Hendrix said I was the greatest guitarist ever. And he and Jeff, I think Robert Fripp and Jeff Beck are correct in that. But like turning that, oh, balloons. Turning that, managing that. And I mean, King Crimson's just like all of the incarnations are off the charts, but like especially that one in the 80s is my favorite. And like that band was put together of like solid, hardened, like studio musicians, but also, legends already, even in the 80s. And they made it work regardless of people's levels or not. So maybe it's not, so I think going back, it's like, yeah, you got to listen and you got to be willing to listen. And, that's the last I'll say of it. But like when you're willing to listen, like amazing things come through if you're hearing it and if you're tuned in.
Yes, they are. And thank you. I lost my train of thought. It's funny we haven't brought up Laurie Anderson yet, and I'm wondering, should we be playing this week's installment of 7 Degrees of Laurie Anderson?
Well, I think we are. Yeah.
Okay. So my question then is just, and Diana, we're making notes of Tin Machine. In 300 words or less, 7 degrees of Laurie. Welcome to 7 Degrees of Laurie Anderson. Can I get Laurie Anderson to David Bowie? Go.
Yeah, I mean we're already there because he said King Crimson, the Beat era, and Adrian Belew was in that, and he played on Home of the Brave with Laurie Anderson. So we're already there.
I was going to go. I was going to go through her husband,
Lou Reed.
Oh, Lou Reed. Yeah.
Yeah, Lou Reed.
Good path.
All roads lead to either Lou Reed or Laurie Anderson.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in and point out, this is a dead end and a quickie. Adrian and Tony Levin from the Beat era are playing with Danny Carey and Steve Vai to do those albums with Robert Fripp's blessing right now for a live thing. So that's just something that is current and should be interesting for people who are into that Three of a Perfect Pair, Beat, and Discipline.
Fantastic. Thank you, Razi. Your hand is now down. Okay. I'll just really quickly, and I thank you. I feel this conversation has come to a really nice cadence. When we originally started with jamming, and here we are, and I love it. Just out of interest, I watched a movie this week, and it does have to do with jamming, called Jacob's Ladder from 1990. It was Macaulay Culkin. He did it before Home Alone. And it's really interesting. You watch that movie and you go, wow, Macaulay Culkin can act. Like, that kid can act. And I've never seen, it was on a DVD, a set that a friend gave me, a whole bunch of DVDs, and it was in there, and I've never seen it. That's not the point. The point was that it was a curious horror, a really disturbing psychological uncomfortableness that I don't know if could be achieved anymore, because in doing so, to create it, you have to go somewhere different. To watch it, you have to go somewhere uncomfortable. And I was just thinking how, that's the sort of thing when you're jamming or when you're creating a song. It's interesting how people listen to a song from the beginning to the end. But the process for creating a song for me is not that at all. It's not a linear thing. And it's really weird to sometimes go, I'm looking at it from the side and everybody else is traveling through it, and I'm looking at it from the side. And I'm probably, well, if you've got a certain amount of musical education or musical education, it doesn't have to be from a university. You can get it from playing your instruments and talking to other musicians. And if you're aware of what went on during the creative process of that song, it's really interesting to see this thing. The really big point I want to make, keeping it on topic, is that I had this realization that I need to start getting back into using pen and paper. Because there's something about using pen and paper, pencil and paper, for lyrics, for musicality, for all that stuff. It does make the process longer, but I think it makes it better. Whereas digital is so fast and so easy to put down. The thing about a pen and paper is that if the lyrics are good, you have to write them out again. And you're not going to write them unless they're worth it. Same with the music. You're not going to write it down unless it's worth it. It's not sitting at Cubase going blah, 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 blah. So anyway, that's my thoughts. And Razi's holding up something, a book. I don't know what the book is. Actually,
Pen and paper.
Pen and paper, perfect. Ivan, I see your hand. I'd love to hear from you.
Jacob's Ladder was an amazing movie. The trailer for that dropped with Flatliners. Saw Flatliners in the theater. The trailer for Jacob's Ladder came up, and it was just like, oh yeah, know where I'm going to be.
It's really interesting how movies have changed. It's really interesting how, and this has to do, I'm sorry, you keep going. I don't want to.
The trailer that dropped originally, that opening weekend of Flatliners, the trailer for Jacob's Ladder, the background music was Skinny Puppy. Could swear it was Alice, like really good. And then like that movie's wonderful in its harshness. Also, like should have never been, no attempt should have ever been made to remake that.
Did they remake it?
They did. Badly.
I don't know. Anyway,
2017.
Okay.
He's like, how do you retell that story? Game over. You can't. Like, for one, like Hollywood can't tell that kind of story these days because they don't want to. They're scared of it, and it's not going to sell well in China.
That's the point I'm trying to make, is that once again, I don't want to talk about them. I want to talk about me. I want to talk about you. I want to talk about us as creators, is that I want to address this.
And Jacob's Ladder hit hard close to home because, like, you've never gotten to experience blood sugar that's so low that the meter just says low. When your blood sugar is that low, that movie becomes reality.
Wow. It is really interesting how it's an ongoing thing that I find really fascinating, how when I look back at movies of that era, music of that era, there were risks, there were things going on where, and I don't want to talk about Hollywood and I don't want to talk about money. I want to talk about you, me, and my creative process and what's changed in me. And I want to talk about how to get that back. That's what I'm always trying to figure out, is how do I find the edge? How do I get back to the edge? And it was really funny. I was about to say, how do I comfortably go back to the edge? The edge is not comfort. And that's one of the beautiful ironies of now, is that as an artist, I am so scared of the edge, but that makes the edge even better, or perhaps closer, or perhaps even more relevant, because the truth is that listeners and viewers want that edge. They do.
All of the great rewards are found there as well.
Yeah.
Like you nothing ventured, nothing gained. You miss every shot that you don't take. Pretty simple. I have the comfortable position of, I don't have to worry about if it's what I'm doing is scaring other people or making other people uncomfortable. I've spent my entire life inadvertently making everybody around me uncomfortable. I just don't, I'm not worried about it. If you don't like the blood, stop looking at me.
Very true. Thank you. Chris, I see your hand.
Yeah, two things. One, writing in a book versus typing as a author, unpublished, someone who writes a lot. They're two different sort of interfaces and mediums. And it's fascinating how different things are when you write with pen and paper versus versus on a computer. Similar to like how you would write on a guitar versus a piano. And you draw from a different source, and it gets to the, out there in the world in a different means. So it's really, it's another way of getting space around the creation in a like wholly, perhaps seemingly like diagonal way, if that makes sense. And I don't remember why, but this feels germane, but the group Otecker, who I'm a huge fan of, the electronic duo, they, over their career, they've been, making music for over 30 years. And they went from making, like albums that were like at first sort of easy to listen to, and then they progressively got weirder and weirder until at a certain point in the 2000s they just went into outer space. And I'm still trying to understand those albums from all that long ago. But why it's relevant to this is like their live shows are famously like contain none of their album stuff after a certain year. And recently what they've done is they've been putting out their live sets from shows as opposed to albums. And they're pretty much like, we're done putting out albums, and they're doing these live shows, and the live shows are amazing. Now, this is, a little bit of too much sauce, making sausage behind inside baseball, but they do this all from a massive Max MSP patch that they've created with its own interface. That's itself, every one of those concerts is a small part of like something even bigger, like a whole thing. I find that immensely fascinating from the point of view of like, how do you do that as a musician? But like, how do you like what, Carl was saying, don't be a boffin, just actually contribute. But it's like, how do they fix themselves in like space and time with what they're going to do of that big set now? And, what do they take in the venue, like the people in the venue? I think it's an interesting thing about like, just a whole nother aspect of improvisational stuff. And Jacob's Ladder, I gotta fucking see that again, because I forgot how much that messed me up as a kid. So I'd rather it mess me up as an adult.
Yeah, definitely. We need to also start a Tubi list of like really good. And it's always difficult with movies because people just start recommending random movies. Like I want movies that are specifically challenging you as an artist. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, it's just fascinating. Sorry, that was a random thing I just said. Do we want to keep going on this? Like once again, we've reached a great thing, or do we want to talk about Diana's question? Diana, do you want me to ask that question, or would you like to ask? I love your voice. Or I can do it if you want, but I love you.
Okay. A turn. How do you deal with when you're collaborating and keeping people on task, I guess? I don't know if you can put it better than I did.
Yeah, this is hard. Artist management. Oh, I see Rezi's hand. Tell me about your thoughts on this, Rezi, please.
Start with ridiculously generous deadlines and timelines, and move on to working with people that you suspect can deliver and collaborate and have the time, and ask early in the project if they do have the time and they think they do. And then once things start going wrong, you've still got your buffer, but you can be very specific with them about why you need what, when, and if there's a compromise to be made, what's blocking them from delivering. Maybe we can pivot a little bit and do something else to save effort and time or get you out of a bind. Yeah, those are my thoughts. They
All
came
right.
to mind instantly when you posed the question. So
Okay, I appreciate that. I mean, um, we do our best to, if we have to do like a last minute edit or not get on screen, um, just sometimes it feels like no matter how overly specific we can get with our, here's what we need, it feels like we have to even be more specific sometimes.
yes, absolutely. It does feel that way because it's true. And those specifics can trigger people to do stuff. Or your alternative is to know when you have to cut bait and let them go and move on to
Okay.
your alternative, your backup plan. So yeah.
Carl, you seem to have notes on this.
Yes, I have trauma on this.
Oh.
Sorry, notes. My first thought is you need to make sure that you're working with them only if you know they can deliver. Talented people aren't always reliable. Dealing with flaky musicians, flaky artists, unfortunately, if an artist is flaky, ultimately, more often than not, they're going to go nowhere. And if they end up going somewhere, they're going to have a middle person between them and the world. They're probably going to go through a lot of middle people because they're just such a pain in the ass to work with. So you're going to be dealing with the middle person, or yeah, I just got to tell you, if you're flaky, you're done. You're done. You are done. You're going to go nowhere. Because people are going to, it doesn't matter how good you are, people are going to get sick of working with you. So yeah, first thing is you got to make sure that they're not flakes. Second thing, absolutely what Razi said, you got to give them a deadline that's 2 weeks before the actual deadline. And you know, I guess with your stuff, it's difficult because it's, okay, I need this stuff right now. Like, for example, at the moment, I'm doing Remix CD, and it's really interesting, on a side note, to notice how many people are very, very depressed right now. That a lot of artists I'm working with can't deliver because they have basically catatonic depression. Yeah, and it's really interesting that I don't know what it is, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So when I did this remix album, my thing was I have a rough timeline, which is a long way away. I'm now coming up on nearly 6 months of doing this one. Some of them still haven't got back to me. Some of them are, yeah, I want to do it. What's the absolute deadline? And I'm still going, oh, look, man, whenever you can. Soon it's going to be, I need this by the 1st of August, or we can't do it, or September, or we can't do it. So, or what I'll say to them is actually August 20th, knowing that some of them are going to be 10 days late. You are hurting cats. And yeah. And the other thing is, be prepared that you have to do it yourself. And then the other thing is that if they fail you, which inevitably they will, what do you do then? Do you say to them, hey man, look, I'm really sorry, but I needed this on this date and I just need to move forward? Or do you do it yourself? What do you do? There's no real answer to that one. My answer to that one is I let them know they fuck me around and bitch, you're fired, basically. Because the stakes of what I'm doing is a lot higher than what the stakes of other people are doing it. And my high stakes, I will just say, were this high even when this wasn't my job. Beforehand, I had high stakes on this. And that's the thing. That's the real thing you can tell about an artist, is that if they have high stakes, if they're going to deliver it, you've got what it takes. Mate, sincere condolences. That's all I've got. Chris, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Sure. I was the guy who dropped the ball recently on a very big project of mine. I too suffer from clinical depression, and yes, it's been rough, in and out. But what I realized, like when I got this it was a remix compilation, and we just got the CDs back finally, and they look and sound great. But after it was done, I was just like a mess, and my wife's like, "What's going on?" And it's like, I screwed myself over on this. I was the weak link. I thought other people were, but I was being the weak link. And she let me whine about it for about 45 minutes. And then she's like, so how are you going to prevent this in the future? In a nice way, not, how are you going to? But I said, I realize for my health and well-being, if I'm like organizing the thing, I got to have all my ducks in a row, and not like rigid, like, lining up in military formation, but like, do I have my support strategies in place for myself? Do I, what kind of deadlines should I expect? And yes, the 2 weeks out thing, brilliant. I actually did that with my folks. I gave them a year, and someone still asked for more time and delivered a good remix nonetheless. But, I guess my contribution to this would be like, if you're, you I guess be clear and honest when you're approaching people with what you need and when. And also, if you're being asked to contribute, like, to something, collaborate, like, is it in a place and time frame stuff that you can deliver based on where you're at. So I hope that's helpful, because this remix was a learning experience that I will never forget in good and bad ways. But it was really important. It was really great for me to be able to understand that and see like how to prevent it in the future. So,
thank you very much. It's one of the real difficulties about doing stuff like this is that you're working with people who are not being properly compensated. And I found even with some kind of, look, I can't pay you, I can't swap a remix, but what I can do is I can send the remix that you did and one of your original tracks to my DJs, and that will help you somehow. I will put you on compilations. Still that doesn't account for much. Then 20 seconds later, that same person is complaining because people can't hear their music. I don't know how, and it's really interesting that working with musicians, especially with remixes, is hard, because it's something that I face often. And Diana, I think of you guys, that it's so wonderful the way MTV TV deals with the community so much, and deals, like, every week there's an artist on, and I know how much work is leading up to, how much work you guys put into, like, from when I've done it, I've seen the work you do. You script it, you edit it, you do all that stuff. There's so much stuff involved, and it's amazing. But I just don't know how you do it, because I could not do that. It would be full time. I just, so I take my hats off to you and Adam at MTV TV for being able to.
I appreciate that, Carl.
Yeah.
We want to have like the latest, the newest videos if we can. But New Music Clock to us is what's new to us. I mean, we've had old Music Clock where somebody sent us 2 different videos from the 80s, but the videos were still new to us, so great. But I want to have room for, somebody sends us their brand new video to put it in as close to that release date as possible. But right now I got myself to 2 weeks out for artists and so I got the set list together, I got the video, but we also have to leave room for, somebody sends us the brand new thing and says, I'd like to have it on this week that we can do a quick edit and add it in. But how do I put this? Like I said, some people will actually read the, hey, this is the instructions and this is the submission that I need, and we need it this way. And some people just send it the way they've always sent it and not read the instructions. And no matter how specific I can get with, hey, this is how we need these things, there's always something that's different, and we have to be able to, you know, change up on the fly, if you will, sometimes, and be ready to just have those moments where we just have to do it ourselves.
I feel your pain. I really feel your pain. And yeah. Yeah. Again, what you guys do is incredible, and we all thank you for it. Managing musicians, man. Actually, the hardest job I've ever had, I thought, was managing creatives when I used to work in the gaming industry. The hardest job I've ever had is actually managing translators, because they exist on this realm. It was actually very fascinating, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot about managing and stuff. And that's the other thing, is that, why are we talking about managing right now? This is one of the, we'll talk about tax next. You got to figure out what they can do, and you know how they can, you know, because everybody's bloody good at something, and you got to figure out what that thing is, and you got to figure out how to interact with it and how to get them to plug into the thing in a way that's comfortable to them. And that's a skill that I do not have, that I wish I had. Bowie had that skill. And you can usually pick by someone's career, because they're surrounded by people who really go, yeah, you're awesome. I don't really have anything to talk about. Does anybody have a really cool topic they want to bring up about making art or making music or anything like that? You want to have a topic, or we could rate. Cool. Shane, what you got?
Sorry, Razi. I'll make it true. I'll just say, you know, it's been interesting. I've been having conversations, and this is sort of like, you know, in my therapy session, this is the kind of thing I drop at the 56th minute of the hour just so I can get another 10. But I've been talking a lot with musician friends who have been doing this for a long time, and like who want to quit doing music. And my response to them is, I deal with that just about every day, if not weekly. And I've been doing this for 40 years, and at whatever capacity. And it's like, you know, and then I'm like, okay, do you want to quit music, or what's going on? And usually what happens is we'll have a discussion, and, you know, I'll find it's like something else, like, you know, there's something else going on in their life or something. But I think it's interesting, Diana, what you were just saying, you know, the phrase managing expectations came up for me, and made me think about like working with others. But I think you know, this big thing again with like quitting music is like, you know, managing my expectations. It makes me think about managing my expectations of what I want out of this machinery here, versus like what it's going to be give me, and like what's realistic or not. And you can very easily get into a thing of like, you know, getting down on yourself, but you know, because, oh, I can't do all this and I can't stay awake for 28 hours a day. But it's just been interesting to see what this conversation of like, yeah, maybe it ties in even a little bit, Carl, with what you were saying about the depression people are feeling, but like, you know, managing your expectations about like, what are you trying to get out of your music? And what are you trying to do with this? You know, briefly for me, I'll say this is my live stream rig, which I've been working on for a long time. And I just realized suddenly, yeah, balloons for live stream. I don't know if you guys see that when that comes up, but anyway, I've been learning like I'm approaching it entirely wrong. And, you know, just like how I'm using this stuff, what am I using? What do I want to do with it? And literally started this yesterday about pulling out individual instruments and learning them better to understand better how they work as a whole, which, you know, some people spend a lifetime doing, but it's, I don't feel like quite hit my main topic, but that thing of like, you know, yeah, managing expectations. I'm gonna leave that was my thesis.
And I thank you very much. I do appreciate it. I want to circle back to you in a few minutes and ask you what's with the balloons. But first, I want to talk with the Mr. Razi. Hit me, Razi.
Balloons, menu bar, camera icon, turn off effects and emotes. That is the shortcut. I can get you there. There's two things. There's one that comes to mind, and I'd love to know why every creative I know either has a debilitating stomach bug or crippling depression this month. Across the board, I think there's some numerology involved. And on the topic of getting to know an instrument well, I hopefully, Carl, you do want to jump back into what Chang's talking about, but there's a difference among chorus effects, plugins, and pedals that's really interesting to me. And I don't know if we can spend a few minutes talking about differences among chorus topologies and how they work and what you've found as your favorite modulation source, not flangers, not modulating echoes, but chorus, Roland chorus. Sure. I don't know. Tell me which direction we're going in, and I'll either elaborate or shut up.
No. Let's go from depression to chorus.
Yeah.
Tell me. I want to hear your thoughts
So
on this.
I've had this, you know, my attempt to build all of my stuff with stock plugins is ongoing, and I always, you know, like getting the most out of what's built into the thing so that when you fire it up on any machine, you don't have to install your extra plugins, and you can go with a demo version of your DAW and just be happy, because those are the things that you know well, and you know it inside out. And like, whether it's the synthesizers or the audio processing or just how to use it, of course, drilling into the parameters of the audio effects is super gratifying, and knowing that I can get any sound from the stock stuff. You don't need third-party plugins. But as much as I love, and this is Ableton Live for me, what Ableton has done to advance some of their choruses built into the delay, and the chorus built into the chorus effect, and the advanced one that has some other settings. Audio Damage's chorus fluid sounds better. Every time I use it, it sounds fantastic. And, you know, it was a bragging point about how good that chorus was when they released it. But it sounds different. It sounds more spacious, and it reminds me much more of the CE2 and Space Dimension D Roland stuff from back in the day, which is a real classic watery jazz chorus kind of sound. And it's so good and so correct for what I'm trying to do that I cannot emulate that, changing the delay time, changing the modulation rate, changing the modulation depth. I think it just might be a multi-stage delay that he's using. Several instead of just two. I don't know. It's magical. Anybody else got something to, I don't know, favorite choruses and why they work and what the differences are?
Fascinating. Shane, what are your thoughts on this?
Nothing will ever beat a Boss CE2 pedal. Ever.
I know, mine got stolen
I don't
a long
care.
time ago.
Yeah.
Sucks.
And that's so great. I love Audio Damage plugins. Everything of theirs. I use it on every single set in many forms, and they take. It's funny. They have some great reverb plugins, but one of their programmers is like, I hate reverb plugins, but he still made a damn good one. But that chorus, yeah, that's amazing. I'm trying to think of some others. Oh, Small Stone's good. I gave my nephew one of those. I gave my nephew a big muff distortion pedal and a Small Stone chorus pedal, and I'm like, God damn it, why did I give him those and not keep them for myself? Because like just so much, so amazing out of the pedal like that. But yeah, those are, and I think you're right. Like, I mean, I have a bazillion plugins, and I'm a big, I've been using Ableton since the demo, and there's nothing like running stuff out into old hardware. And like there's I think Ableton's guilty of this too. There were these really lousy digital chorus and phasers that came out in the 80s that replaced like the old Boss ones. And the phaser sound on them, like nothing beats that solid, MXR 90. Oh, that thing just it's like you're swimming through a sea of brie with a coating of butter. It's just so amazing.
Genius.
Yeah. But nothing gets past that. And the 80s, so many bad flangers and phasers, and to hear them again, like the accurate plugins, like, yeah, I use because my boxes are all, my stomp boxes are all in storage at the moment, but I use Audio Damages a lot. Valhalla Delay, their their delay plugin is astounding. They have a free plugin called Supermassive, which you will never ever you need to use another reverb again. But their phaser is really amazing. So
Valhalla DSP wrote the algorithms in the Audio Damage. Chris Randall was talking about that. Like you were saying that they don't write their own DSPs. Valhalla's reverbs and chorus stuff together. Their modulated reverbs are some of the most brilliant and satisfying to listen to. EOS is the Audio Damage reverb that he wrote. So you're talking my language with those. I've shopped around a little bit for a new CE2 chorus, and they're mono. That's not even a stereo effect. So it's not like a widening thing. It just sounds great and does its thing. And my teenage childhood guitar rig stereo splitter was the CE3, which nowhere near as good, but it definitely did the job for splitting a guitar signal into stereo for going out to amps. So I'm definitely coming from the JX3P's built-in chorus, Roland, the Boss CE2, and also the Dimension D plug boxes of this is what chorus should do and sound like, even though those are all very different characteristics. But yeah, Fluid just does that. Like whether it's on guitar or bass or, keyboard pads or whatever, it's absolutely doing it for me. And there's a lack of comb filtering and a lack of metallicity in them that I'm not able to get with the stock Ableton ones right now. So it's been a journey. What was that, a Line 6 pedal that you were showing?
Yes, that's the Line 6, sorry, dog hair, MM4 modulation. And these things are like, I mean, they're door stops, and they're just amazing. But this has like all so many variations of like, the phasers, the flangers, and it's very true to and loyal to the original. So I mean, it's funny. I'm looking at it and I realize like, wow, I've used that. I used it for so long as just like chorus, but almost as a through pedal to other gear because it's stereo outs. But it's fantastic.
That's exactly how I used the CE3 on my
really
pedal board.
faithful. I would say Line 6 stuff comes really close in terms of stomp box to that old. Nothing sounds like that, man. And I have the little green phaser, the stomp box that Boss made. I forget what that's called. And that's
PH, yeah. I still have a Small Stone phaser, and I'll have to get a CE2. But for now, Fluid is doing it as a plugin. That's the one in my entire guitar processing chain that I've been tone pursuing over the past couple of weeks. The one unit that has to be a third-party plugin is the chorus.
Oh, cool.
Fluid in this case.
You
but
should
the rest
check
of
out
it's
Audio Damage has a Discord too. You should check that out.
Yeah, I used to follow Chris Randall's blog. He used to write a lot.
I don't know if he does. He was on. I don't know if he's as active on Twitter, but he's on Discord a lot. Yeah.
Cool. It's a good tip.
Fantastic. Well, I think it's time for us to raid on over to MTV TV. I want to thank you all for joining us today. This is Art of Rock every Saturday, right here, right now. Watch it on Twitch or the YouTube. It's bloody greatly appreciated, and I hope you get something out of it, because we're trying to get everyone through this very difficult period that we're going through. It was made possible by Angelspit's Patreon, $3 a month, or for free. There's a whole bunch of content on there that's for free. Remember the Industrial Incisions playlist. Jump on there. A whole bunch of new bands that you need to know about, and it's good fun, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Just before we do, jump on over to MTV TV. Get ready on that raid, Diana, but not just yet. It might help. I have a theory that intense news cycles adds to people's depression. We're going through one hell of an intense news cycle right now. And I'm seeing a lot of people say, depression is getting too much. I'm getting off social media. So I would be suggesting that if it's getting really rough, get off the internet. The internet's not good for you. It's a toxin, and it's fucking you up. It's making you very concerned and worried and fearing a big animal that you can't fight and you're powerless against, and that's bullshit. Remember, they just want you engaged so you get to spend money on dumb shit you don't need. That's what this is going on here, kids. So get off social media. Excellent, Shang. Detoxifying social media, that's great. And I will guarantee you that's going to take the depression down a notch or two, because this shit is frying brains. We're now going to go somewhere bloody amazing, and that's MTV TV. Now, the thing about MTV TV is you are going to find your new favorite band there. And if you have a video, send it to them at that email, and you will find an audience. We have to keep MTV TV going. And if you do a podcast, please, or a Zoom or whatever these things are, live stream, always raid back to MTV TV. So Diana, let's raid. Stick around, keep watching MTV TV, because you're going to find some awesome stuff. We will see you next week. Pure, absolute, total rock. Thanks for joining us. Let me know when you've, and I want to find out how to put balloons into my friggin' thing. Let me know when we've rated. We've rated. All right. Thank you so much. Wow. Look, you guys, look at you and your magic things.
Ozzy, how do I turn them off?
No, don't turn them off. Leave them on. Are you kidding me?
Well, if I know how to turn them on and off, I can turn them on for this, turn them off for therapy.
No, keep